Morning glory, evening grace, brethren and sisters. Great to have all of you back along with us here with Temperance Awakening. And I look forward to going through our next tobacco lecture here today. I'm going to be looking at the government. The government and tobacco. Let's find our place here. At all levels of government, tobacco use creates a number of problems. Tobacco companies are large businesses that provide jobs and pay taxes that support many government programs. However, they also produce a product that has endangered millions of people over the years, burdening society with enormous costs for not only lost wages and productivity, but also health care. And so that is a very controversial history that tobacco has had, like with the U.S. government. Like at the national level, the government has helped the tobacco business. Major tobacco companies have also influenced federal laws and regulatory policy. Of course, in recent years, though, the U.S. government has really had its hand forced and had to take a lot of restrictions, like off of tobacco, like with not allowing them to have radio TV ads or like sponsor sporting events or, anything along the lines of that. And now looking at international trade. According to the U.S. Constitution, the federal government has the power to regulate not only trade among the states, but also trade with other nations. And tobacco has long played an important role in international trade, and, it's certainly one of the most important, as, if you remember, it was the first major American export crop. I believe we've already mentioned that, like the cigarette back in the 1700s. Was created by John Rolfe, who was the husband of the very popular Native American lady Pocahontas. And it still remains an important crop. In the 1980s, though, tobacco companies were facing a decline in sales at home, i.e. in the United States, and American companies tried to boost exports of cigarettes. When they encountered barriers in foreign markets, they approached the trade officials and the federal government for help. Their proposals found a receptive audience. For many years, the United States has purchased more goods from foreign countries than it sells. Trade officials were eager to find products that would help to reduce those losses. Government officials pressured Japan, Thailand, and South Korea to open their markets or lower import taxes to improve the sales of American cigarettes. As a result, American companies were exporting 243 billion cigarettes by 1996. By 2003, the number of cigarettes had dropped to 120 billion at a value of 1.4 billion. In recent years, the World Health Organization, the International Public Health Agency of the United Nations, has become concerned over the rising sales of cigarettes around the world, even though they have declined in the United States, in most parts of the United States over the years. Like other countries, like in developing countries, like in South America, Africa, and poor and Asian countries, though, they have had a rise, like in tobacco, not just cigarettes, but also like in cigars, like chewing tobacco, and like snuff. And to deal with the connected rise in health problems, the World Health Organization proposed a treaty for a worldwide control of tobacco sales and advertising. By June 2003, 40 nations had signed, but not the United States, and it's unlikely that the United States will ever ratify the treaty because exporting cigarettes brings a considerable amount of money into the U.S. economy and helps to offset imports of clothing, electronics, automobiles, and many other products. And now looking at tobacco subsidies. A subsidy is a grant made by the government to an enterprise that benefits the public. To help the nation's farmers, the federal government manages a complicated system of subsidies that controls how much they can sell and at what price. Those subsidies include tobacco farmers. According to the American Heart Association, the federal government spent some $40 million in 1997 supporting tobacco prices and other tobacco-related spending. That money is a direct subsidy. Anti-smoking activists, however, point out that even more money is spent on indirect subsidies. Smokers suffer from cancer, heart attacks, strokes, and lung diseases. The government pays for much of their medical care. Medicare is a system of healthcare insurance for the elderly and permanently disabled funded by the federal government. Medicaid is the healthcare program that assists people with low incomes and is paid for by both federal and state governments. The National Center for Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia University found that in 1995, treating tobacco-related illnesses accounted for 14% of Medicare spending and 8% of Medicaid cost. Now, those percentages might sound small, but Medicare cost the federal government $198 billion a year, and its share of Medicaid costs come to $87 billion. The federal government also pays additional expenses for smoking-related health care through organizations like the Veterans Administration and the Department of Defense. And of course, like I said, the like VA health care and the Department of Defense health care wasn't listed like in the Medicare and Medicaid things, which I know, though, that the VA, the Veterans Administration, and the Department of Defense also do pay money for tobacco-related illnesses because I was in the military. And actually, you would find military people have a very high rate of tobacco use, like all tobacco, like chewing tobacco, dipping tobacco, cigarettes and cigars, because the military has a higher tobacco use than the general population of the United States. Like just me taking an educated guess, I'd say that I'd probably have to say that like at least 15% of the people in the military use tobacco, but I'd say that's a generous number, maybe even more than that. And now looking at state governments and tobacco. States also bear at least some of the cost of tobacco-related illnesses. As previously said, each state is responsible for Medicaid costs. According to the Organization for Tobacco-Free Kids, the 2002 bill for tobacco-related Medicaid costs for all 50 states was more than $10.11 billion, with additional state cost of $2.2 billion. Total tobacco-related health costs were more than $75 billion. In 1995, the Mississippi Attorney General Michael Moore decided to sue the large tobacco companies to recover his state's costs for treating people with tobacco-related illnesses. And that became really the first successful time that anybody had ever gotten any money out of tobacco companies. I'm currently writing a book about tobacco, as many of you know, and I was actually just researching that. The other 49 states filed their own suit, so what Mr. Moore did caused a trend, and then, all the 49 states followed him and filed their own suits against tobacco companies. And over the course of several years, the states and Big Tobacco negotiated, finally coming to an out-of-court settlement in November of 1998. The tobacco companies agreed to pay 46 of the states included in the settlement more than $200 billion over 25 years. In addition, the companies accepted new restrictions on advertising and sales of cigarettes to young people. Special payments were arranged for tobacco farmers. Tobacco companies even agreed to fund a new organization, the American Legacy Foundation, to educate people about the danger of smoking. The tobacco companies resolved the lawsuits of 4 other states, those being Mississippi, Florida, Texas, and Minnesota, separately. The Master Settlement Agreement, as the settlement with the 46 states came to be called, was the largest legal settlement in history. The amount of money to be paid under the agreement staggered many people. As the settlement was announced, a variety of innovative new anti-smoking programs were proposed. It seemed as if a whole new era was beginning. Some states established trust funds investing their settlement payments so that earnings would continue to provide money for various anti-smoking programs even after the payments themselves stopped. But by 2002, more than one-half of the settlement payments were being diverted to purposes other than health care. As hard economic times hit the country, tax revenues fell, but the expenses of running government programs remained the same. States began to look at tobacco settlement money as a way to fill in budget gaps. Wisconsin faced the worst fiscal situation in the state's history, sold off its $5.9 billion settlement for a one-time payment of $1.3 billion, enough to balance the budget for 1 year. The tobacco settlement payments are arranged much the way lottery payments are. The money is usually paid off over a long time span, 20 or 25 years. However, the recipient can take a single lump sum payment, but it will be much less. For states, this financial arrangement is called securitization. States offer bonds, i.e. securities, to raise funds now which will be paid off of settlement money received in future years. While Wisconsin is so far the only state to mortgage its whole settlement, other states like Washington and New Jersey have sold a portion of their funds. Cash-strapped states such as California have securitized 10 years of payments to raise $4.5 billion. And now here's just a little section here about the debate. Where should the money go? Some organizations believe the money from the Master Settlement Agreement should be used only to pay for health care for tobacco-related illnesses. Other groups, notably the American Cancer Society, argue that the settlement money should also pay for tobacco control programs to reduce smoking. Many states have devoted a portion of the money for anti-smoking programs. Hawaii and Texas are setting aside a percentage of their yearly settlement payments for trust funds with income from the investment devoted to anti-smoking programs. Connecticut invested several years of payments into a trust fund, with the proceeds going not only to smoking reduction programs but also toward a freeze in tuition costs for its state university. Alabama will use its payments to fund a $50 million program to bring manufacturing facilities to the state. Several southern states have decided to devote portions of their settlement money to help tobacco farmers. Of course, if you're familiar, most of the tobacco farms are in the southeast. North Carolina chose to put one half of its $4.6 billion settlement into a trust fund. The profits are then given as grants to poor rural counties in the state. Tobacco farmers are also eligible for grants. Tobacco has long been the state's leading cash crop. Hard economic times and a steep drop in tobacco prices and growing quotas have hit the state's farmers hard. North Carolina set up something called Golden Leaf, LEAF, standing for Long-Term Economic Advancement Foundation. They set that up in 1999 as a nonprofit corporation. Golden Leaf has tried to help tobacco farmers diversify their crops. With grants from Golden Leaf, some tobacco farmers have experimented with growing grapes. Other choices include hot peppers for use in organic insecticides, herbs for the natural health market, and exotic mushrooms. Farmers are also experimenting with raising goats and pasture-fed hogs. The foundation is also supporting new farm products. Grants have helped pay for a blast freezer for blueberries and egg processing plant, research and uses for sweet potatoes, and marketing help for wheat crops and selling goat meat. A local college received funding to set up an agribusiness center in its business school that will not only expand educational opportunities, but also serve as an information resource for farmers statewide. Among the millions of dollars distributed by Golden Leaf are a number of educational grants, including one to improve internet access for rural counties and another to train and keep teachers in rural areas. The fund has also offered college scholarships to students from the poorest and most tobacco-dependent counties. And now looking here at politicians and tobacco. Like other businesses, tobacco companies influence elected officials, especially federal and state lawmakers. They also hire lobbyists, which are professional representatives, to influence policy and laws in the industry's best interest. If they want to be elected or stay in office, politicians today need votes and money to campaign for votes. At a time when TV ads are often necessary to clinch, all elections, even like local elections, the cost of campaigning is very high. The Tobacco Industry Research Committee, which is known shortly as TIRC, is a public relations group funded by tobacco companies. And it was founded and claimed in 1994 that the tobacco industry helped almost 2 million Americans make a living. And that figure is quite inflated, as that figure includes people who drive trucks that deliver cigarettes to stores and clerks in convenience stores who sell tobacco to customers. People in the core business of tobacco, that being the farmers, workers in tobacco factories, executives, and the large distributors, number more around 550,000 according to a Department of Agriculture estimate. But, even so, that makes for a lot of jobs. And, these workers and their families are going to be interested in any political developments involving tobacco. That's their livelihood at stake. They're going to vote. And tobacco companies are also major taxpayers. Estimates of federal tax on cigarettes for 2002 was $8 billion. States and localities received an estimated $11.6 billion in tobacco tax revenue in 2003. The Center for Responsive Politics, a government watchdog group, compiled stats on political giving. Under federal election laws, corporations are forbidden to make contributions out of their own treasuries, but they can contribute to political action committees, which are known as PACs. PACs. In addition, executives and employees can make private donations. Between 1979 and 1990, an 11-year period, tobacco companies contributed $1 million to political action committees for elections to federal offices. And then in 1995, the tobacco industry began to face the lawsuits that would lead to the Master Settlement Agreement, as well as attempts in Congress to impose new regulations on the business. In the 5 years between 1995 and 2000, the 2000 presidential race, tobacco PAC contributions shot up to $6.2 million. And that represents more than double the previous rate of giving. The Center for Responsible Politics found that total tobacco-related political contributions between 1995 and 2000 came to $23.2 million. Action on Smoking and Health, ASH, an anti-smoking group, reported that $32 million had gone from tobacco companies to candidates and parties between 1995 and 2000. Tobacco companies have continued to be major contributors, as a Common Cause, another watchdog group, examined donations for the two-year election cycle between January 1st, 2001 and December 31st, 2002. Tobacco companies and executives gave out more than $9 million to political parties or through PAC contributions. Until 2002, what they call hard money given to candidates faced federal regulation, but soft money given to political parties did not. A new campaign finance law limiting soft money came into effect in 2003, and tobacco companies gave only $1.1 million in contributions in the first 9 months of that year. And now lastly here, looking at a balance of power. Governments have been forced to balance support for the tobacco industry against the cost involved with treatment of tobacco-related illnesses, as well as, all the anti-tobacco, and temperance movement that is out there today. Governments have also considered the cost, both political and monetary, of tobacco regulation versus the benefits of tax revenues generated by tobacco. Tobacco companies have shrewdly used their resources to influence government policies at the federal and state levels. The threat of action through the judicial branch, the nation's court system, presented tobacco companies with a major setback in the form of the Master Settlement Agreement. Yet with the help of some lobbyists, the tobacco companies maintained allies in the executive and legislative branches and influence in most levels of government. However, nowadays, though that was previous, in years past. However, today, though, like with all the laws, that there are about smoking, tobacco companies, ran out. They ran out of influence with all the anti-tobacco pushback, which is what we're going to be looking at next week, is the next class, Laws and Tobacco. So come back and be with us then. And thank you for being with us here today. And I hope you've been getting help from these lectures, as our email address is there. We can help you in any other way. Just let us know. And we look forward to being with you again soon. And so we'll see you in the next class for the next tobacco lecture. Until then, till the day breaks and the shadows flee away, I am Dr. Cooper, and I love you, and I appreciate you.